the walls a little bit fast, I think.
Yeah.
Can I ask someone for the access code? I had this in my phone, but not, thank you.
Janelle's coming.
We'll whisper it to you.
This is the access code for Joe's bank account, right?
Yes, exactly. I read that scam thing and got some tips from
You gotta
Lewes.
eat the paper when you're done, right?
Okay, gotcha.
Actually, I could use the same thing. How does this work? Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else?
No thanks, I'm good.
Well, we knew you were good, but,
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I
see what we got.
attention to detail, yes.
Yes.
Okay, looking for me, doesn't recognize my glasses yet. Come on. Nothing on here.
Of course. Well, I copied it down, but typically I use a little bit of a...
Anne Marie, Tom Jensen said he was also going to zoom in.
I don't have no folder.
As long as you don't like that's where you all come from.
Oh, I have it, I do have it, because
This is the only,
I must have put it in last time, because it came. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, there's always a definition. When you tell me you're ready, Anne Marie, I'm going to get started.
I think we're good. Everything's streaming, but Tom's not on the Zoom call.
Is Dr. Sharp on?
Yeah.
Well, at least we have Dr. Stacy, so we got one covered. All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Wednesday, September 15th
You'll be
at
sorry for
6:30
that, I
PM. This is the regular monthly meeting of the Lewes Planning Commission. The first announcement I would like to make is to welcome Jonathan Sharp as the newest commissioner to the Lewes Planning Commission. Mayor nominated him on Monday night, and City Council and Mayor unanimously approved his appointment. He's going to fill the unexpired term of John Nearboss, which is 2 years remaining. Dr. Sharp is a retired, well, he's Professor Emeritus of Oceanography from the University of Delaware College of Marine Science, just down the pike a little bit. He's a well-researched and well-published person in this field, and we hope he will be able to educate us, as he did his students over the years, on some of the important things that are before us and help us understand some of the latest research results and technology. He was going to join us tonight by Zoom. He may be having a problem since it's his first time, but we look forward to seeing him in person, hopefully at the next meeting, and gaining his contributions rather quickly. Commissioner Jensen is also away today and traveling. He said he was going to Zoom in with us at some point. I hope that'll be sooner than later, but we look forward to having him as part of our picture on the walls. Are there any other announcements from any commissioner wish to be made? Anne Marie, do you have anything for us?
Nope.
Okay, Janelle, Glenn, any other announcements before we get started? All right. First order of business is unfinished business. It's the presentation, discussion, and possible recommendation of Mayor and City Council regarding a minor subdivision for the lands of Thomas for the creation of one new lot with a residential lot to be located off Oregon Avenue and Bay Avenue, zoned R3, Sussex County Tax Map 335-4.15-24.00, MS-2-21. This is a matter for which we've had the public record open until the 13th. There have been a number of comments received. The applicant has submitted a good deal of supporting documentation through counsel and applicant made presentations to us. The record closed as of Monday, but for anyone who did not have their comments received by Monday the 13th, please rest assured, when this matter is referred to Mayor and City Council, they will have a public hearing, and there will be ample opportunity for additional comments to be submitted then. This is before us for a recommendation. In keeping with our procedure, I would like to organize us in the following fashion. I would like to get a motion, approval or disapproval, get that seconded. Then I would like to get us to have a discussion about conditions, if any, or about approval or disapproval, so that we have a framework for our discussion, and we will come to hopefully a conclusion of making some recommendation. I don't know what that'll be. In assisting us, I've asked Janelle to draft some ideas, both for approval and not, that are before us. Those are just working documents for us to help us think more precisely and in keeping with the code and otherwise. I appreciate her doing that. One is 2 pages, just in case you haven't noticed. The one with the yellow arrow in the lower right-hand corner has 2 points on the back, and the other one is a half page, the denial. So I'm open for a motion by someone.
Yes, I would like to make a motion.
Thank you, Melanie.
I would make a motion to deny the application for minor subdivision for the following reasons.
Please.
This is in the residential beach zone, and purpose 2 in the zoning for this zone is to preserve the distinctive residential character of the beachfront area. The proposed lot orientation breaks with the established character of house fronts facing each other on these secondary roads. That's point 1. Point 2 has to do with our direction in the subdivision regs. The preliminary consent is predicated on a provision that lots shall be of such character that they can be used for building purposes without increasing danger to health or from fire, flood, or other hazard, or peril from fire, flood, or other hazards. That's a direct quote. The property may be subdivided with lots facing Oregon, in which case drainage may be oriented towards the unused city alley property, perhaps in a swale, thereby alleviating or at least not increasing runoff to the adjacent property. Potentially, with the proposed lot and house orientation, drainage will be directed from Bay Avenue down towards Cedar, thereby impacting an already distressed lot and building. So for these reasons, in addition to the drafted reasons from Janelle, I would recommend denial.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, further discussion. Before we vote, we'll have take as much time as necessary to discuss this. And if we have questions about the application, Janelle is here prepared to answer those. And we will, as I asked earlier, try to come to a recommendation tonight to Mayor and City Council, whatever that is. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Deborah, did I see you want to?
I was just getting ready.
Okay.
I'd also like to.
Okay. Would you like to comment?
Sure. I just wanted to make some comments because after reading the letters and comments that were made at the last meeting, I am concerned that there is some confusion about what the actual buildable area is and what the setbacks are. So I'd like to make these comments, and I'd like Janelle to confirm that my understanding is correct, so that we can just get this on the record so that we're all starting from the same facts. So the current lot, as it is right now, the house is within 2 feet of the front property line. That means it provides an existing buildable building line and sets the standard for what, if, for example, the owners were to simply build again on the lot currently as it is, they could build up to 2 feet within the front property line. It would not be a setback of 25 feet. So that if the lot was divided, bisecting it from Bay Avenue, the 2 houses, the house that might be on each lot could be positioned within 2 feet of the front property line. As I was reviewing the comments that were made and letters that came in, it seemed that a lot of folks seemed to think that if it was bisected perpendicular coming out from Oregon, that would provide a 25-foot setback, and it wouldn't. Is that correct, Janelle?
That is correct.
Okay.
Actually,
So,
whenever it's appropriate, I want to challenge that, but we can talk about that.
We'll come back to you in just a minute.
Yeah.
We'll come back, Summer,
We'll come back. I've got a question for clarification regarding this issue.
so if you bisect it perpendicular to Oregon, and this does not address your 2 concerns, Melody, but I do just want to get down what the setbacks would be and what the size and shapes of the building areas would be. It would provide a building area of I'll call it a buildable area. So this is the area after you take away the setbacks. How many square feet are there that you potentially could build on? Doesn't mean you can cover the whole thing, because the house can only cover 50% and only 65% can be impermeable. But it would provide a building area of 3,652 feet on each lot. The house could cover 3,000 of that. Impermeable could be 3,900. If you bisect it from Bay, you now have a 25-foot setback from the front, an 8-foot setback from Oregon. So it's actually increasing the setback from Oregon from 2 feet to 8 feet. And 8 feet on each of the sides and 15 feet at the back. That provides a buildable area of 2,720 square feet, less than would be provided if it's bisected from Oregon. The impermeable area, again, could be 3,000, but since you can only build on 2,000, the house could be 3,000 if you just took 50% of the total parcel size, but because of the setbacks, it actually reduces the amount of coverage that can be had by the house. It also reduces the amount that can be impermeable. So, as I look at this, the actual, if one is focusing on permeability and on issues of the coverage of the lot, the bisecting it from Bay actually reduces that. Now, this wouldn't take into account whether any part of the alleyway would be used, and would any impermeable material be allowed on that section. That's not something that we as the Planning Commission have a say over. We're focusing just on the lot. I wanted to share this because I was concerned that so many of the comments that came in seemed to imply that there was a belief that there would be a 25-foot setback from Oregon. So I wouldn't want folks to be surprised by that not being the case in any of these scenarios. It's either 2 feet or it would be 8 feet. So 2 feet under the current, 2 feet under the situation that you're dividing it from Oregon, and then 8 feet if you're dividing it from Bay.
All right. Before I turn to you, Sumner. Tom, welcome. Glad you could join us. We're just beginning a discussion. A motion has been made and seconded to deny the subdivision, and we are now discussing that and looking at the elements that render that decision. Sumner, you had a question about the
Yeah.
25 feet?
So I didn't, thank you for doing the calculations, Nancy, because I was thinking the same thing based on reviewing the video of last month's meeting. Because Janelle had made a comment about the 2 foot off the line porch. And so I went to the code that's online, and maybe that's not the official one, but the code online under 197-106 in the definitions describes building line, comma, established, and puts in parentheses EBL, and it says the following: where there are established buildings, the structure, and then in parentheses, excluding open porches or decks, screened or unscreened, which is closest to the street on the same side of said street within the same block. In the case of lots fronting on 2 streets, the street within established building line of the fronts of established buildings shall be used. Corner lots shall not determine the established building line. There are at least 2 issues in that paragraph that suggest that the 2 foot figure that Janelle threw out before may not be the appropriate number.
That's interesting, because when I looked at it, I don't have the code in front of me right now, or the exact number, but it did make mention of anything that was covered, and it, as opposed to open patios, open porches, et cetera. So,
Janelle or Glenn,
Do
could
we
we get
have
a
a-
clarification?
yeah,
So we're looking at it now.
okay.
And again, it depends on what that structure is and how it functions. Because it could still be part of the structure, which is gonna give you the 2 foot setback line.
Yeah, I would say it's, I don't know, having looked at the property, it appears to be a carport. It's not a, it doesn't look like a patio to me, but, and it certainly is not a porch.
It's like a
There's a
covered
driveway that
covered
goes,
driveway carport.
yeah.
And then the other question has to do with the corner lot.
So what's your question about the corner lot?
Corner lots shall not be used, shall not determine the established building lot.
So corner lot's not being used to establish the building line, but there is a corner lot section of the code that would reduce the one from 15-foot side yard setback to a 25-foot front yard setback for the corner, down to the side yard, which is 8 feet.
How is this, sorry to be a pain about this. Right now, if you look at the plat map, how is this not a corner lot?
So it is, and there will even, no matter how you subdivide the lot, there will always be one of them, it's a corner lot. But because of the lot size, the frontage, both do not require 25 feet for the front yard setback. One is 25 and the other would be 8, which is the side yard setback. It is written in the code on how you can determine a corner front yard setback. So not all corner lots have 25-foot front yard setbacks. The majority of them actually have, one is a front yard at 25 and the other is actually a side yard of whatever the side yard setback is for the, that zoning district.
So you're saying the lot that would occupy the corner of Bay and Oregon would have an 8-foot setback from Bay, an 8-foot setback from Oregon, and a 15-foot setback at the backyard, an 8-foot setback on the side that borders the other lot. Is that what you're saying?
Which way are we, if as proposed to have them both front Bay,
Yeah.
the corner lot, which would be the corner of Bay and Oregon, off of Bay Avenue, it would be 25 feet. Off of Oregon, it would be 8 feet. And then the opposite of Oregon would be 18, and the opposite of Bay would be 15.
I guess I just read it as the established building line is based on the current lot and
Okay,
its
so you're
configuration.
mixing an established building line with a corner lot. Two
It's
different things.
right there in the definition.
Right, no, but you don't use the corner lot setback to create an established building line. So there's a section of the code that says if you have a corner lot, both road frontages do not have the front yard setback. One has the front yard setback, the other has a side yard setback. So one would have 25 feet, and the other, because it's a corner lot and the shape of that lot, it would have a side yard setback. Doesn't matter if it's this property or another property somewhere else throughout town, you're not creating an established building line, you're just giving it a corner front yard setback.
Can I just clarify, does page 62 of 77 that the applicants provided, it shows a 25-foot setback from bay. This is dividing it in the way that they've applied to divide it.
Correct.
And that is a 25-foot setback on the corner lot of the lot that occupies the corner of Bay and Oregon. Is that correct?
Yes, so again,
Okay.
as shown, as the applicant has submitted in the packet, they do have the correct setbacks shown on that survey.
And I just want to check something about the 2-foot setback on Oregon. That would in no way transfer to any future use, correct? Because unless it was just left as it is right now.
That's the problem I have. I mean, having watched this go on across the street from where I used to live when I lived down on the beach, the established building line was based on the home that was there before they tore it down. So if we're establishing the building line based on what's there right now, it seems to me you're dealing with a corner lot. I get what you're saying, Janelle, but it doesn't make sense if you're establishing the building line based on what's there right now before subdivision.
So if you're replacing what's there now on a lot, they can have, depending on what type of structure it is, 2 feet.
If you divide the lot, bisect, and having
Both front on Oregon.
Fronting on Oregon, would it still be a 2-foot setback, even though that structure that set the existing building line might be moved, destroyed, whatever? And would
I
it be a
believe
2-foot
yes.
setback for both lots?
But, again, we have to determine what that structure is to make a final determination, because if, again, it's an open something, then it would be, whatever that setback could be, which is, potentially, what is that? 10 feet?
I mean, I raise this because I think it's important that we all be on the same page in terms of the facts of the setback. So,
Yeah, I don't see the
I mean, I
Oregon
think-
going to 25 feet. If you have them face Oregon, I don't see you getting 25 feet off of Oregon. You definitely get it off of Bay, but I don't see you having a 25-foot setback off of Oregon.
well, I would think the neighbor's house would set the existing building line, and this is just eyeballing it, the neighbor's house does not appear to be 25 feet back.
It is not.
So, do we know how many feet back that is? Or,
I do not know, but the property that's there is very close.
yeah.
Glenn or Anne Marie, do you have any additional clarification to offer on this point?
Well, I mean, what I would offer is that this initial determination would be made in the building official's office. Unfortunately, he's not here this evening to tell us how he's interpreted this in the past and whether it's an established building line can be based upon the existing structure or not. Based upon Mr. Crosby's comments and what he saw go on in his neighborhood, perhaps that's been the interpretation in the past, that you'd use the existing structure to establish the building line. The question about corner lots being used to establish the building line, I think we're kind of talking in two different directions. On the one hand, Janelle's explaining that a corner lot has, one side is going to be a side yard setback, the other is going to be a front yard setback, and you wouldn't use those definitions to figure out what the established building line is. Mr. Crosby's point is, it seems that the language of the code suggests that you take everything on the street and throw out the corner lots and don't use those to create the established building line. And again, without Mr. Davis here, I'm not sure how the interpretation's been in the past. I think both interpretations, there's merit to both views of it. I just don't know what's been done in the past.
Robin's not on the Zoom, is he?
He is not.
Because I think there are two key questions here. One is, what sets the established building line, and does it confer to any new lot that's being subdivided? But the second one is whether a covered carport is considered setting an established building line or not.
Right, I mean,
So I think there are really two questions.
I may have it all wrong. I mean, a lot of this question comes from watching the way the house across the street from me was built. They left the porch in place so that they could build up from there. If you're gonna pick the house up and move it and rotate it and all that, to me, that is no longer an established building line. That was my interpretation of watching the way it all went down across the street from me. Now, maybe that was them, maybe that wasn't what Robin required.
Deborah, you had a comment or question?
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is the correct time to move in, but might as well. I also had EBL in my notes and had some concerns about that. But more so, what exactly are we considering? I've gone back and reviewed the 2018 notes, which, as the applicant included them and referred to them, I felt was appropriate. And are we just looking at a subdivision of lot, or is there some sort of promise that the existing home will be kept? The reason I ask this is under considerations in the 2018 decision of the LPC, it was noted on the plan that the residential dwelling and garage are to be removed. And then when it went in front of City Council, Councilman Reardon questioned that the survey says that a two-story structure and a garage will be removed. Could this also mean that these structures could not be relocated on the property? And Attorney Sergovich stated that it was possible that the structures could be relocated, but this has not been decided. So what are we actually looking at here, first of all? Are we merely looking at subdividing land, or are we to assume that we are looking at the existing building? Is that to be factored in? Because it's certainly on.
So the request is
drawings
for a
that we're
minor
looking at.
subdivision. They have expressed their intent to keep the house and put it onto one of the lots. But again, the request is for the minor subdivision to create one additional lot.
So my question, are we allowed to ask a question of the applicant or not? Or I will just ask this to you, Glenn.
Yeah, because the record's closed, we prefer not to.
Okay,
But let's try
totally
to-
understandable.
Right.
So just to clarify, then what we are looking at is subdivision of lots. We're not actually considering anything about the existing home.
I think that's correct, because ultimately the home will either have to be moved onto one of the lots, or it'll have to be removed, because you can't create a building line through the existing structure, so.
So in theory, it is possible that if we approve this subdivision today, we could indeed be approving two brand-new homes with the old home removed, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
And I just would clarify, the 2018 decision by the Lewes Planning Commission and Marion City Council are not before us. We are considering the application as amended and updated by the applicant. So while it is important to understand what they discussed before, there were also questions about, I think when Councilmember Reardon made his motion, if I recall correctly, there was also stormwater issues and water
Yes.
management issues that never really were brought to fruition in the final motion. He discussed it, but it wasn't encapsulated in what was recorded.
I
But
just
that's
felt,
aside.
you know,
That's
I wasn't
aside.
sure if we should be reviewing that carefully since it was included in the packet.
It's a
Well,
new day and a new application.
It's also true that that was approved and then expired, so
Right.
we're in a new day.
Okay.
All right,
So
Tom
I'm gonna-
Jensen, are you up to offering any comments, or do you want to hang on for a little while?
Sorry about that. have followed everything and was on in listening mode prior to speaking or seeing it all. So, what questions I don't think has been resolved. I think Nancy asked it, relates to what sets the existing building line, which I think that's a kind of a seminal point here. But I am good for now. That's my kind of concern. No, Glenn addressed it. That's kind of my concerns.
All right, Tom. If you wish to come back with any other questions or thoughts, please just flag us down. We'll try and make sure we can get you into the conversation as soon as possible.
So I have another question.
All right, Sumner.
And I'm sorry that I wasn't here to ask these questions last time. It would have been a lot easier. Although Janelle made it pretty clear that the city determines what to do with the alley, how critical is the alley and the use of the alley to be able to make the access work for the rotated lots? I spent a bunch of time walking and riding around down there today. And at least judging from the way the precedent, as Mr. Survivit suggests we consider, I don't really understand how that middle lot on Kentucky got done. I mean, it's right on the alley. And I'm just curious how all that works. I mean, I've got all sorts of weird things I want to bring up, and I don't know if it's worth getting into. You know me, Joe, I like to bring up weird things.
So the use of the alley, if they use the alley, they use the alley. If not, and it gets approved as proposed, then they would access off of Bay Avenue. So they would have a side yard setback from the alley. So if they use the alley, it would be a review and approval by council about how wide, what it looks like if they're going to grant access to that alley. If not, they just provide a driveway off of Bay Avenue. Does that answer your question?
Yes, but looking at the two lots that were developed on Kentucky, the driveways are all over the place.
Yeah, I would not use Kentucky as a good example. We've been working out some items with those property owners to address, to make sure there's to make sure there's full compliance with code. So think about it as like any other property up and down the street. The maximum driveway width is 20 feet. So if that's coming off the alley or coming off Bay Avenue or coming off Oregon, your maximum driveway width is going to be 20 feet.
And I guess I believe this was a change that was made after Kentucky, and that's that crushed shell and rock is no longer considered permeable. Is that correct?
Correct. That it is.
So you would not be able to do the level of coverage of that on a lot.
Yeah, and that goes for every property throughout the city. If you're going to use shell or stone, that is now counted towards your lot coverage.
I had one other thing that has troubled me driving through the neighborhood, around and around, stalking that poor block. I can't find an alley. I don't know if it's just me, but the alley, I cannot see an alleyway on Cedar. And on Bay, it sure is hard to find an alley.
Again,
some of them are quite defined. This one, not.
This one is considered a paper alley. It
Right.
exists, and people have maybe taken some of that over, but it is grass.
There's buildings on.
There certainly are plantings that have fences going around them occupying the alley. So
Okay.
when you look through, it looks
Yeah,
landscaped. It looks like it's part of the lots on either side.
Right.
But there actually, I think on paper, is this.
There is right-of-way. There's a 12-foot right-of-way that currently is grass, and that's what is considered a paper alley, because it has not been constructed as a road, but the right-of-way does exist. So the city has the ability at any point, if they need to open up that alley, to construct a road through that alley, because it is the city's right-of-way that they have the ability to use. And currently, it's just a paper alley. The road does not exist.
So, one of the things that really caught my eye walking around down there was, yes, because I lived on a different block between Cedar and Bay, and we had the same sort of thing. There were trees and all sorts of crazy things in that paper alley. But again, I may be hyper-focused on Kentucky, but it's the only example that exists. There's no trees. All the trees are gone. And when I'm trying to figure out, when you rotate the lots, and maybe with this established building line thing, which I can't buy into, the buildable lot will have to be narrow enough. It's going to be a lot harder to be putting trees in between the houses. And so much of what I heard in the presentation in August had to do with stormwater, and there are clearly some real issues down there. I'm on record in the whole process with source water protection. We really should be reducing the impervious cover, and it's not there yet. But this is just one more way we're making our lives more difficult to try to manage stormwater down the line. I see you nodding.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I would love to see that 12 feet out of worth of alley become some sort of stormwater management for that little quad of units.
Get closer to the speaker, please.
Could you repeat what you said, Melanie, and can't hear?
Yes, I would love to see that 12 feet of city alley be used for stormwater in the form of a swale or some sort of device that could receive water from the adjacent properties and perhaps solve some of the flooding issue towards Cedar.
Bob, do you have any thoughts or questions or comments?
No, I'm generally on board with this motion. There's out beyond this property, there's a build-out into Bay Avenue. I understand that that's permitted, but would that go away or stay, or what's the story there?
The encroachment into the right-of-way,
In the bay.
that is something that the planning commission can make a recommendation that it be removed or to stay, and that's a recommendation to mayor and council.
Okay, but it's
But
substantial.
I think it would be,
it's,
if, with the motion to deny, I think it would be difficult to make that go away, because then if the property doesn't change,
Yeah.
I don't think you can force them to do something. I'm looking at Glenn, because I don't think you can,
yeah, if the
it's
motion
just-
was the other way,
then you could,
I'd
I think
be
you have
asking-
control over the encroachment in the right of way. With the motion to deny, I think you have very limited ability to address the encroachment in the right of way.
Yeah, I don't think you can address
I'll
it.
accept that.
Yeah, I don't think you can address it through this process, but of course, remember that things in the right of way are always, not legal unless they've been licensed by the city, so their city has enforcement mechanisms to remove those sorts of items. The other thing I wanted to comment on is, based upon the motion, which is a motion to deny, recall that I've instructed you before that if a application is code compliant, you don't have the authority to deny it, you have the authority to attach reasonable conditions. I haven't heard any discussion about, is there a reasonable condition that would address the concerns that have been raised? There may not be any, and then the motion is entirely appropriate, but I think you should make a record of what sorts of things you've considered that aren't sufficient, won't sufficiently address the concerns that have been raised.
Joe?
First of all, I'm curious about, for access for it'll be the relocated house, which will be adjacent to the alley. How much of the alley, if this were to happen, would be needed to get a driveway in there? I mean, everybody's talking like the whole alley's gonna be paved over. It might be the first 10 feet.
Correct. That would be a request from the applicant to mayor and council, and that would be up to mayor and council as to how much of the alley they would allow. Again, the alley is only 12 foot wide. A typical drive,
20.
parking space is, a typical parking space that you see in a standard lot is 9 feet.
Yeah.
So that's gonna be up to mayor and council if, again, this moves forward.
And then the other thing was about flooding on the site, and I I can't picture flooding coming down from Bay Avenue. It would be creeping up from Cedar, from the canal behind everybody. I can't picture stormwater, which there is no stormwater controls anywhere on the beach, and why we are imposing stormwater facilities on this site. I'm just,
Can I address that? In this area, Bay Avenue is the high spot. So water does run, not tidal water,
yeah,
but rainwater.
yes,
So the tides come from the canal,
behind.
but the elevation is at Bay Avenue and drops from there. So,
Okay.
so stormwater does run
Okay.
towards Cedar.
I don't go out in the rain, I'm sorry.
The photos and the videos that were submitted show that.
All right, let me, go ahead, Nick, go ahead.
I was just going to make 2 points. One is, we can also make a recommendation to city council that the paper alley not be used for access.
Sure, sure.
And I guess, you know, the question I'm hearing Glenn raise is there a way to, through recommendations, address drainage, et cetera? Because I'm looking at one option that, in a sense, has less coverage, which I think is a good thing overall in terms of water management. But the issue is the orientation of how these are being divided.
Khalil, do you have any questions or comments you wish to make? I'm not asking how you'd vote, I'm just asking if you have any substantive input you wish to share?
No, I don't.
Okay. Well, let me go back one step because of the initial concerns that were raised. And again, I'm not foretelling how we're going to decide this, but I'm raising this question. Are we in a position to make a decision tonight because of the setback and buildable area questions that we don't have answers to? Do we need those answers before we make a recommendation, pro or con, on this? And do we need the building official or the city manager to tell us what the answer is?
Well, so one thing I want to let you know, because it could relate directly to this, is that tomorrow morning, Mayor and Council have a special meeting where an ordinance will be introduced that would transfer that role from the building official to the planner. So by the time this subdivision is complete and building permits are to be issued, it's going to be how the planner reads the existing building line, unless council goes a different direction. But that's, I would say, very likely to happen. So at this point, I would give a pretty good weight to Janelle's read of existing building line.
But hasn't there been precedent set? So wouldn't precedent be followed?
Well, precedent may have been set, and I might need to defer to Glenn on this. In some cases, if an incorrect reading of the ordinance has been applied, it will need to be corrected going forward.
Glenn, she's asking you for your opinion on this, so I'm sorry to interrupt.
Did you get what I was saying?
Yeah, that at some point, I mean, and if the role is going to be in Janelle's hand, the planner going forward, you know, there's a new person who's now making the initial interpretations with my advice and counsel when she seeks it. Like I said, I think there are a few things that we'd have to really analyze here that I'm not sure I have a sufficient answer tonight. One is, if the corner lots are truly thrown out of the established building line analysis, then there are no other lots on this street. So is there no established building line and you do default to a 25-foot? Mm-hmm. If, on the other hand, there's some case law out there that says whether you have an established building line option and you only have two corner lots, then you use those, you know, then you default to using those corner lots, then, people will always remind you that zoning laws are to be, they're an abrogation of rights, and therefore they should, when there's an opportunity to go for the property owner or not, you tend to lean toward the property owner's rights. That's not to say that this isn't established someplace in law, but I think this is a very unique situation that I'm not sure how it turns out if we did the research all the way to its finality. Janelle is going to be the one who's making those decisions going forward. From what I hear from her, you know, it sounds as though there's very little chance that she would interpret it in a way that it's a full 25-foot setback. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
And I think there's support for that position. I just don't know when you do the final analysis which one has more support. And I'm sorry, I just don't know. This was a question that hadn't been raised with me before this evening.
So what's the pleasure of the commission? Are we in a position to await further clarification on these issues, or are we prepared to go forward with a recommendation to mayor and city council with conditions, whether it's the denial or the approval? We can attach conditions as we send it forward to mayor and city council. And I just want to say, on a separate issue, this encroachment issue we've raised, a number of times. It is a separate issue, and as a member of the planning commission, I've argued before, it needs to be addressed by mayor and city council sooner than later, and not just on the beach properties, but across the city in a uniform way. There has to be a solution to that. This one-off situation is really disadvantageous to the homeowners and to the rest of the city. We need to have a uniform standard to correct or address these problems, and not to punish or reward anybody for their current behavior or planned behavior. So I again would like to go on the record urging mayor and city council to make this a priority to address this, because it's going to come back to us in many other applications or many other situations. Secondly, I think the paper alley question is also one that should not be driven by a single application. We have had that issue come up with paper lots and paper roads in other parts of the beach that the city have ultimately decided to dispose of some of those properties. But in this instance, I think we need to take a look again at the alleys that are paper alleys and decide what really, that's also a sort of the flip side of the encroachment issue, and need to decide how we're going to handle those going forward. We've sort of let these lie dormant and not really be addressed in anticipation of needs or concerns or requests for using that space, and I think we need to get ahead of that curve. It is not something before the Planning Commission. It could be, if mayor and city council so deemed it, but it is a mayor and city council standard that needs to be addressed in some fashion. And I would like again to go on the record, as I did last month, encouraging them to take these matters up sooner than later and to figure out how best to address these. This is not just a beach problem, I reiterate. It's not just a single property. It is citywide issues that we need to come up with a standard and a solution that goes forward. All right, I don't know, based on Glenn's last comments, are we still in a position that we want to proceed to come to some recommendation tonight? And or do we want to defer this till we get more information from the new genius of setbacks and building area, or from the old one?
I think we should defer it.
Yeah.
Charlie, our city engineer has a comment, and since he's a city engineer, it's not getting public comment.
I just want to make sure I'm not missing something, because the way I see the subdivision plan that's been submitted, it actually has the setback requirements that Janelle outlined, 25 feet off bay for both lots and 8 feet from the sides and 8 feet in the back. And I'm just wondering what all this consternation is about established building line, if this is going to be the recorded plan and it actually has the setback lines on it.
So
maybe I'm missing something.
there was concern from the neighbors that having it front on Bay is not appropriate, that they should be turned to front on Oregon,
Yeah,
where
I
you
understand.
have an
Okay.
existing building.
I understand that, but I
Yeah.
guess that's not what's being discussed or evaluated tonight.
That was correct. What, that's actually a very valid point.
Really good point.
Because the request is for 25 off of Bay, 15 opposite, and then 8 foot on the sides.
Yeah, I feel like the setback part of it has been answered per the subdivision plan that will be recorded, But, you know, all these other issues about the alley and encroachments and things of that nature, those are different, and maybe they do need to be discussed.
But Charlie, whether we approve or deny the application, the issue of whether or not the subdivision should be off Bay or Oregon is something that we can comment on, and I think
Sure,
that's
yeah.
part of
Yeah.
what we're all about.
I get it, okay.
That's part of what we're all about. It's not just the square footage or the setback issue, it's the orientation as well.
Understood, thank you.
Okay. But thank you, Charlie, for coming up.
And I think if an objection focuses on water management, the question of increased coverage being possible if it fronts on Oregon, then that setback becomes an issue if it's only 2 feet.
Okay.
Yeah, the reason I brought it up is because Janelle pointed it out in the meeting. And to me, it's an opportunity. And I just wanted to, I mean, whatever it is,
Currently, the building's about 2 feet off the property line, so that's what it currently is. You know, if it ends up being slightly more, as I've looked at it, I don't see it a 25-foot. I could maybe see where it goes to the house, but you're still not getting to 25 feet, which is still much less than a 25-foot front yard setback, which goes back to Ms. Stacy's comments.
Well, I appreciate the discomfort that delay always causes, especially to applicants. I don't feel comfortable making a decision without having the facts in front of us in terms of what the setbacks would be. And I think we need to know, is there an established building line? Is it the carport that's setting it? Or is it the neighbor's house that's setting it? Or is there no established building line because both of those lots are corner lots?
So the point that Charlie was making, Mr. O'Donnell was making, is that the proposed plan that would be recorded shows the setbacks that would be recorded. Now, of course, our code has another layer that could be considered, but I suppose if you were on the other side of the coin and moving toward an approval, a condition would be, you know, the building envelope would be or the setbacks would be no greater than what's shown on the plan, but they could be further restricted if the city council were to revise the zoning code and make further setbacks. So I think that is one condition you could impose, but you're not on a motion to approve, you're on a motion to deny. But I think Charlie's point is extremely relevant, that the applicant has shown a plan that has setbacks that under any review of the code that we've talked about here would be consistent with city code.
Question for Janelle. If the orientation was to turn to face Bay Avenue, two new houses, well, new house and reconstructed house, depending on the flood zone there, would the new house be built up on pilings, and would the existing house be set on pilings?
So, it is in the floodplain, because I'd be surprised if it's not, and I'm like 99.99% sure it is, that the house that's existing, if it is not in compliance with flood regulations, it will have to be in compliance with flood regulations. So it will have to be elevated above the base flood elevation with the 18-inch freeboard.
Right.
And of course, any new house would have to be complied
Elevated
with
like
flood
that.
regulations
You
as
know,
well.
I somehow see the neighbors' objections to the turning of the houses as if the houses were to remain facing Oregon, they're like a buffer against rainwater and stuff. But now, whatever happens, if they're going to be elevated, they're not going to provide any buffer against floods or, you know, whatever you want to call it. But it's interesting to be sure that they won't be having solid foundations or crawl spaces and stuff like that. They will be elevated and things can ebb and flow under them.
They will be required to comply with the base flood elevation, whatever that is, and however that is constructed, because there are ways to have a crawl space with flood vents,
Right.
which complies with flood regulations.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, I'm going to poll the commissioners so we can determine if we're going to proceed. We have a motion to deny that's been seconded. That doesn't mean we're going to go with denial. We could go with approval with conditions. I'm just simply asking now, regardless of whether you want to deny or approve, are you prepared to move forward tonight? Sumner?
I don't think I am. I would like the same information that Commissioner Stacy's looking for.
I would be ready to move forward with the vote
Okay,
tonight.
Joe?
I'm not ready.
I'm
Donna?
ready.
Bob?
I'm ready.
I'm not ready.
So we're tied. Tom?
Tom?
Not ready.
Not ready.
And has Dr. Sharp joined? Do we know?
We haven't found him yet.
Well, that's inconclusive. Let's put it off.
I mean, look,
Excuse me?
He just needs to speak into his mic.
I said that's inconclusive. You know, let's just wait for some additional information. I'll say I'm not ready.
well, let me ask this. Speaking to Mr. O'Donnell's comments, the plan that's been submitted includes setbacks. Are those setbacks binding, or is all that really matters the outer line as it goes forward to the city council, and that the setbacks would be interpreted later?
I think it's fair to say that the setbacks are not binding. You as a city would have authority to argue that there is some representation made on the drawings, but for example, if the city council changed the setbacks, it doesn't mean that these setbacks are the ones that are approved, and that's what that's gonna be the buildable area. So by the same token, if there's some other code provision that the applicant could take advantage of, I don't think these setbacks would ultimately be binding unless there was a condition made to make them binding.
Thank you.
So right now, we have the sense of the commission that we're not ready to proceed to a decision tonight. I think if we're going to defer this matter again, I think we need to make sure that all of the questions that need factual response from the city, whether it be Robin or Janelle or Glenn or all three, we have completely communicated to them what we want. On behalf of the applicant, I think we would all like to be making a decision tonight, but I don't know that we have.
May I interrupt, Chair, because before you get there is a motion and a second, and as a procedural matter, you either have to call for a vote or the motioner needs to withdraw
I
the
understand,
motion.
I'm not there yet, I'll be there in a minute. Which is what I was starting to say. I know the applicant would like us to reach a decision, move this along to mayor and city council. But given the concerns that have been expressed tonight, procedurally, which is where I was headed, we do have a motion and a second. Commissioner Moser, do you wish to continue with your motion and have a vote on it, or do you want to withdraw it?
This time, considering where the board is mostly sitting, I would withdraw it.
Is the second withdrawn?
I can, although just to complicate things, Glenn, could we, is there a situation whereby we anticipate that we may recommend denial, but we recognize that this council may choose a different path, and we still attach a number of conditions that would apply if it were to be approved? Is it black and white?
So that's really unconventional to recommend conditions on a denial. I mean, it's almost a suggestion that there's a way of approving it and here's the conditions to do it. So I don't think the record you would make by establishing conditions on a denial is probably not
But
great.
I think there is a way to do that without saying these are conditions, saying what the rationale is for the denial.
Here are the issues.
Right. Here are the issues, and then mayor and city council have to resolve those in whatever decision they reach. So I don't think it's setting conditions, but we have to explain our vote, and in the explanation, we set the criteria by which mayor and city council have to factor in those issues in whatever decision they reach. So you did withdraw your second?
I can go either way. I'm happy to withdraw my second.
Okay. Your middle name is complicated, but
Yeah,
Well, the author of the motion has moved to withdraw it, so I'm going to accept your 50-50 as a withdrawal.
fair enough.
So I'm going to, again, urge all commissioners sooner than later to get your specific questions that were raised tonight or not to Janelle and Glenn, so we can get, before the next meeting, we can get the information back from them that will give us a definitive position on some of these questions that are pertinent to our rendering a final recommendation. Again, we're going to be making a recommendation to Mayor and City Council, so we have to explain it. We have to justify it individually, so be thinking about your answer, thumbs up, thumbs down, mops, nicks. Just be prepared to explain the factors that are pertinent to your rendering your vote, whatever that is. And I don't want to know. I just want you to be prepared to come with those issues sharply defined and prepared to comment on them. All right. I'm going to move on to item B2 then under unfinished business. Presentation, discussion, and possible recommendation of Mayor and City Council regarding an ordinance to amend Article 9 of Chapter 197 zoning of the Municipal Code of the City of Lewes, Delaware, Section 19773 relating to floodplain regulations. Now, this is a long-term effort on behalf of the Planning Commission and our subcommittee, our floodplain subcommittee. What has happened recently that we all know about is that we were required to submit the proposed ordinance changes to both FEMA and DENREC. There are changes that have been produced as a result of those evaluations. I'm going to ask Janelle to address those succinctly so we can see in the packet. I think they're highlighted in yellow. Yellow's her color today. And we are open for discussion, but I think we have gone the extra mile required nonetheless to get these reviewed, and I think they're in pretty good shape, in my opinion, and thanks to Melanie and her subcommittee and others who've contributed to this, I think it's time to bring this forward to Mayor and City Council. But Janelle, please take us.
So thank you. So the main items from that we received from DENREC and via FEMA were our regulations regarding fill in the floodplain, and that was one of the big ones, was floodplain storage capacity. That is not a term that is used by them, so they asked for some clarification, so the ordinance has been amended to address that. And then I think there were just some other changes to address major subdivisions and to clarify for other developments that for major subdivisions shall result in no net loss of floodplain storage per the fill in the floodplain. All the other comments were pretty minor. And then again, you did hold a public meeting back in December, and we've been waiting a little bit of time, and then the subcommittee did get back together, and we did send them back, and we were waiting for a second round of comments, but we did not receive them, so we thought just to come bring it back forward to the commission to see if you are still comfortable with moving it forward to mayor and council as your motion back in December.
I'm going to ask the chair of the subcommittee, Melanie, do you have any insights into this? Are you prepared to recommend we approve this and send it on to Mayor and City Council?
Yes, I strongly recommend approval. I think that the changes were really just massaging some of the language and clarifying some of the language. So I'm comfortable moving it forward.
Are you making that motion?
I am making that motion, yes.
I'll second that.
Joe will second it. All right, so we have a motion and a second to recommend these changes to Mayor and City Council. We're open to discussion. Sumner?
So I think I asked a question like this when this first came before the full commission. And in light of some of the projects that we have had in front of us since then, I'll ask it again. We know water levels are going to change, that the floodplain level will ultimately rise. And my reading of all this is that we will end up determining that there can be no net change in no net loss of the flood carrying capacity within the existing floodplain. But we can predict that down the line that existing floodplain will be a higher place. how do we protect there being damage done to that new part of the floodplain? Is it just something we have to live with?
I think it's something that we will have to live with. I think that, obviously, this needs to be coordinated with sea level rise regulations if we ever adopt something, or when we adopt something. I'm gonna be more optimistic. And, yes, things are in flux, in terms of floodplain elevations, but I think we have to move with what we have in place. We have to move with the floodplain as it's currently delineated. We all, I think, understand that the floodplain will grow, will change. But I think this is the best we can do for today, and we can certainly make additional changes as things move along.
Well, and we'll be comfortable in the fact that as the floodplain rises, so will those lands that will be subject to what's in this ordinance,
Yes,
as long as they haven't already been developed.
yes.
I think,
Correct.
if I may be so bold, and Khalil, please correct me if I'm wrong in what I'm about to say. I think the expectation of mayor and city council is that the executive committee on resiliency will be addressing a broader-based impact of flooding, water, all three types of water, at some point with recommendations to mayor and city council. I think this is one step in that direction, but it's not the only initiative that the mayor and city council are undertaking. I personally think we are overdue to get this thing on the books, and see what other things we need to do to complement this related to sea level rise, related to stormwater, related to groundwater infiltration, and come back perhaps to this down the road if we see there's some deficiencies. But I think we are well overdue to get something in front of mayor and city council on this issue, and I'm stepping out as I shouldn't, I guess, but I really do think this is a very positive step, and a lot of good work has gone into this. Thank you, Melanie, and your team, but it's time, I think, to get us moving, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't mean to belittle what's been done here. It's an absolutely essential step. I'm focused 100% on that comprehensive approach that you've described, and I look forward to that.
Khalil, do you agree with my assessment?
You were spot on, Mr. Chairman, thank you. And just to add, I mean, it's probably gonna, not to get expectations high, it's gonna, the Resiliency Committee is probably gonna meet for 5 or 6 months. And so it will be sometime, early, mid next year when recommendations are produced.
And there's no saying that the first round of the Resiliency Committee is going to produce everything we want, and there might be other things that have to be set up. So, I mean, I'm personally encouraged that the mayor and city council have said this is something we should be doing on a broader base. And while I've labeled this as Water Workshop 4, we are getting a lot of new faces at the table to discuss this and to lay out issues that I think are important for all of us to consider as we go forward. And whatever the decisions are, it will be a collective result at some point, and I think my expectation is, again, there will not be just one result from the Resiliency Committee. There may be several steps and several times that we come up with something that has to be enacted. All right, is there any further discussion on the motion to recommend this to Mayor and City Council? If not, I'm going to call the question. And we don't have to say yay or nay, other than yay or nay, we just have to, yes, no individual explanation.
Question, Mr. Chairman, if I may?
I'm sorry, Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I have this, but being new to this one, on the question related to fill, is there a distinction made between new building and new projects within the floodplain as it relates to, as opposed to renovations, in existing structures? Because I know that's been an issue. Can we clarify that? Does that need clarification?
This applies to only new major subdivisions. So if you have an existing house, this does not apply. It's only for new major subdivisions that come through the process.
And thank you, Janelle. I do see the term major subdivision in there, but several places and highlighted, of course, but I did not, the new piece of it, I think, was implied, but that's, thank you for the clarification.
Can I ask one really small question? It's a minutia question, too. Under the general provisions, where it says, and I know you agonized word by word over this, use appropriate construction practices in order to prevent or minimize flood damage in the future. I'm wondering, I'm sure you discussed during your meetings, during your subcommittee meetings, how far you could define that. And I'm just wondering if this is as far as we can define that.
I'd just like to explain that a lot of the language in the existing regs came from FEMA. It was directly adopted from, what they had offered to the city. And so a lot of that we didn't massage at all because we were really focused on the fill issue. So.
But I will say, in response to your question, what was there before was simply to encourage
Right.
the utilization.
I'm looking
This
at it,
says
yes.
you will use it. And I think that's where we put the
That's
burden
key.
on our building officials, our planning and development people, to implement the best practices at the time, and those are changing all the time. I do think this is a step forward. I don't think we're gonna get in this kind of reg a phraseology or terminology that's going to be in the future applicable necessarily on what are the best practices. But appropriate construction practice, I think, is a good handle to say, that may not be what it is tomorrow, but here it is today, and we're gonna count on our officials to implement the best practices. So I think it's, getting rid of encourage and put in use is, I think, a big step in this city, because we have a lot of encouragement, but not a lot of requirements. All right, I'm gonna call the question. All in favor of recommending this to mayor and city council, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Anybody abstaining? I take it it's unanimous. Tom, I didn't hear you, but I take it's unanimous?
Aye, yes.
Thank you very much. All right, thank you all very much. Let's move on to the reports. Annexation Code Subcommittee.
I missed the last meeting. Maybe one of you guys can explain where we are. I don't even really know.
We've provided Janelle with outlines of what we think needs to be drafted at this point, and
I've been trying to get a meeting set up and have not been successful in getting everybody to a date. So we're still trying to get everybody back together.
Okay,
It's been
but
a
the next
busy
step is
month.
to come back and you'll have something for them to review?
I'm just
Great.
trying to get everybody together for a meeting.
Okay, great. And we'll make sure Sumner's there. All right, subdivision code.
we met recently. We're making good progress. We've talked about a broad kind of schedule, hoping to have something back to the LPC by November. We are looking at potentially having two sessions for input, one with developers and one with homeowners or the public.
But even if it's aimed at developers or the public, it's going to be open to the public.
Yes,
Anybody is going to participate.
absolutely, yes.
Everything is in sunshine.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Khalil, do you want to add any additional comments about the executive committee?
No, other than we just met, as you know, yesterday, and we'll be meeting every 2 weeks for the next 5 months. And I just want to reiterate what Drew mentioned. It's a very impressive committee, a lot of engineers, a lot of folks from the University of Delaware's Institute of Public Policy, Public Administration, as well as DENREC has some of their experts there. So I think it's a very engaged committee, and I don't know about you, Drew, but I'm learning a lot.
And there's certainly a lot of opinions on that committee. Different perspectives, which is good because we need to meld them together into solutions. Just remind the public, those that are on the Zoom or even in front of us, those meetings are the second and fourth Tuesday of the month. Everyone's welcome to be an attendee, not a participant. They do try and allow for some questions from the public during the end of the sessions. The sessions typically last an hour and a half or so. So I encourage anybody who's interested, please feel free to join. It's on the city website, it's on the city calendar, and I think it benefits anybody who can participate. All right, I'm going to turn to the other reports, please, very quickly. City Solicitor, anything?
I have nothing to report, Mr. Chair.
All right, Joe?
Without going into details between the planning commission and the H Park, I'm being hit from both sides for my email histories on certain subjects. It's not a good spot, no.
You're Mr. Foya.
I am.
That'll teach you to say something about things.
Great fun.
All right, Janelle, anything else on your plate we should talk about?
I don't, thank you.
Other than we give you condolences for the change tomorrow if it goes through.
Thank you.
City manager, our ex officio member, anything you would like to add?
The only thing I would add is that all meetings, you mentioned the Executive Committee on Resiliency, but all public city meetings are being held in person with a Zoom option and broadcast on YouTube. So if you do wish to come in person, please wear a mask. But there are multiple ways to view, and once the meetings are over, they are on YouTube forever for your enjoyment and pleasure.
Boy, if I knew that, I might not want to take this job. All right, I'm going to move on then very quickly to the minutes. Are there any changes, amendments, or corrections to the minutes? Unfortunately, I have some. I just need to clarify, Jackie, on the paragraph A, where it says, because we do not have a quorum, we need to amend the following language. We do not have a quorum tonight, instead of the comma, put in the word for the review of the Fisher's Cove plan, period. It will be rescheduled for Wednesday, December 1st. Then it says, Commissioners Deborah Ewalds, Nancy Stacy, and Bob Heffernan will be recusing themselves from discussion and voting out of an abundance of caution. Hence, comma, there will be 6 commissioners for discussion, consideration, and vote, take out 2 vote, on a possible recommendation of Mayor and City Council on the 1st, add on the 1st. Are there any other corrections or additions to that? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
I move we approve the minutes as amended.
Thank you, Nancy.
Second.
Melanie seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, Joe, you ready for your motion? To adjourn.
Actually, hold on, one question that came up from someone I ran into in the street. Janelle and Marie, as a project moves through our world on the planning, the development site, we've made a recommendation to City Council. City Council then takes it on. How can one keep track of where projects are as they move further from planning? Is there a project-specific place where one can get it all, or do you have to go through the minutes from City Council and whatever?
So every application and every subcommittee has their own webpage, or its webpage. So you can track the progress of where everything is on the web pages. So the city's website has, I'm gonna use Old Town at White's Pond because it was just approved. It has every comment and every kind of piece of paper from when it was submitted to when it was approved, except the notice of decision's not there because I haven't written it yet, but it has everything that's there, so you can track it that way and kind of see where it is. And we do try for like some of the subdivisions to throw in the subdivision flow chart and kind of tell you where you are in that process.
So as a project is kind of finishing up relative to the city's consideration, if one wants to get the best picture of what the record says must be done, where does one go? And I'm thinking project by project.
So you can call me, because I'm gonna know right off the top of my head typically where a project is, or you can look on the website and see what, like, the last action that was taken by a body, and that information's typically on that application's website, that specific website.
So in case it isn't abundantly clear, I hope that there's a way that we can fix that down the line. You've got a lot on your plate, but I'm hoping there's a way that we can ultimately have something that puts things together by project, by parcel, if you will, so that people can, it's kind of one-stop shopping. I realize the committees all determined all these things, and there's records associated with each of them, but I think it would be nice to be able to keep track of things by project. Just throwing it out there.
So, yeah, every project has its own webpage. So, Old Town at White's Pond has its entire own, all the paper files are, probably 99%, because there might be something missing, because I didn't start with that one. Everything that's in the paper file is typically on the website for that, so each application has its own webpage. So if you've noticed, you start seeing like MS, that's a minor subdivision, a CZ is a change of zone, so I've started giving them file numbers so we can track them in the future. And they all have their own webpage, so all the documentation that's associated with that goes on its webpage. So if you go to the city's website under government, and then it has planning activities, and then it says development reviews and planning projects. If you hit the development reviews, you're gonna find all the site plans, all the change of zones, all the subdivisions, and you just find which one you're looking for, you click it, and you're gonna, everything that's associated with like Old Town of White's Pond is gonna be on that webpage.
From all the other committees as well as planning.
Well, typically there's only planning, mayor and council, yes, and if there's a report from like Parks and Rec, that is on there, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. Sorry.
That's all right, that's all right. Are you looking for a scorecard or something that's, you know, no, seriously, by projects? So you
Okay,
can see what the status is?
I'm married to one of the members of the Byways Commission and good friends with another one. And they were trying to keep track of all of the different projects along the byways. And it just occurred to me it would be nice. My sense is most of the stuff that's in the planning, development stuff is what we do, but I'm not clear on how many of the things that council may take on once they're considering things, whether that gets back onto that or if it kind of stops when planning's done with it. Do you understand what I'm saying?
So like a subdivision process, I'm just gonna use Old Town because it's been granted approval. All action taken from, so the report from like the initial applications on the should be on the website. The report from the Parks and Rec Commission is on the website. All the public comments are there. All of the initial staff engineering reviews, the staff reviews are there. All the action for waivers by mayor and council are there.
Okay.
So the only thing like for that one that's missing is the notice of decision and the final resolution, because I need to write the notice of decision and then I got to get the resolution signed. But everything, and Anne Marie's bringing it up, so you can kind of see this is everything, and it's broken down. So at the top, because that's the most recent, you're going to find your final plan information. So you can see like the exhibit, the 338-page exhibit booklet that was there, they submitted, is on the website. So if anybody's looking for that, it's all there. And then as far as you go down, you get to the preliminary consent and then public comments.
All right, that's
What
great.
he's really looking for is the left-hand column, which is the list of all the projects.
Oh, right there.
Well, no, but it's
And
actually what you just said.
Then you can type into, you know,
Right.
pull up the individual project and see everything.
I don't want to waste everybody's time here, I'm sorry. It was a question that was raised, and I thought it was a valid question. I've only focused on what we do with planning, and I just had never bothered to see that, and I'm glad to see that. That takes care of it, thank you.
Yeah,
Sumner, we
I'm
want
sorry.
you to go home happy.
and all the subcommittees have their own webpage too. So there's one for floodplain, there's one for the annexation zone, there's one for the subdivision code. So they all have, everything that we're working on goes up there as well.
Can I offer a reply to this too? Because the byways, go outside, they cover an area much greater than the city of Lewes. So, I think perhaps, which I'm happy to send an email and show to whoever's watching, if you go to the Plus Operations dashboard and you click in to the map area that you want, it will show every single major subdivision in the region. You know, so that's how, for example, as I keep track of things, I know what's on the horizon on Old Orchard Road, which does affect us here.
But that map won't cover all of the details that are in
No.
there. And that's what I was
No,
looking for.
but it could show them,
It'll identify the projects.
Yeah, it'll
where,
identify the
where to go
projects.
and show them what's on record for all the projects
Yeah, yeah.
in and inside of this, in the city and outside of the city.
Okay,
Thank you.
You have a motion.
We do.
A motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded.
Second. That takes precedent. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Thank you,
Motion is
Gino.
adopted. The commission is adjourned at 7:52.
Early.
Thank you all very much.
I shouldn't go away.